Dispatch said stalled SUV, shoulder of Route 18, 2 miles past the grain silos. Lone driver still on scene. I figured dead battery, maybe alternator, maybe somebody who ignored the warning lights until the car made the choice for them. That was most of my job anyway. Other people's bad timing. I found her standing beside a dark SUV with the hazards blinking weak and uneven through the rain. Red hair soaked flat at the top and curling at the ends. One arm wrapped around herself. The other holding a phone she kept waking up like it might suddenly save her. She looked up when my truck lights hit her, and even from the cab I could tell she was trying hard not to lose it. I pulled up in front of the SUV, threw on my work lights, and stepped out into the rain. "You, Jenna?" I called. She gave one short nod. "Please tell me you're Wade." "Depends. You the one with the dead SUV?" That got the smallest reaction out of her. Not a full laugh, but close enough to count. By the time I got near her, she was soaked through. Nice coat, nice boots, the kind of clothes that said she had expected to be somewhere warm tonight, not stuck on a highway shoulder in the dark. "What happened?" I asked. It made a noise, then another worse noise. Then every light on the dash came on at once like it was trying to panic me on purpose. I popped the hood, hit it with my flashlight, checked the battery, cables, belt. Took me about 30 seconds to know it wasn't getting solved out there in the rain. "It's not a quick roadside fix," I said. "I can tow it in." She closed her eyes for a second like that answer landed on top of 10 other things she was already carrying. "Of course it's not." Her phone lit up again, then went dark. "Battery dying?" I asked. "Everything I own is dying tonight, apparently." She said it like a joke, but there was something rough under it. I noticed then she didn't have that normal stranded driver energy. Most people were annoyed, embarrassed, angry. Jenna looked like she had already had a worse night before the SUV quit. I got the truck set, winched the SUV up, strapped it down. She stood under the edge of the open side compartment to stay half out of the rain, arms crossed, watching me work like she was trying to keep her mind from going somewhere else. When I opened the passenger door for her, she hesitated before climbing in. "Sorry," she said. "I'm not usually this much trouble." I shut the door behind her. "You should see what counts as trouble out here." Inside the cab it was warm, loud with rain, and close in a way that made strangers talk different. I pulled back onto the highway, wipers working overtime, and for a minute all we heard was the engine and weather. "You from around here?" I asked. "I was," she said. "A long time ago. And now," she stared out through the windshield. "Now I'm apparently living in a furnished rental with bad parking and a dying SUV." I looked over at her. "Temporary? That's what I keep telling people." It was the first honest thing she'd said with no edge on it. She told me she'd been in the city for years, came back recently. Didn't say exactly why at first, just that things had blown up slowly and then all at once, which sounded rehearsed, like a line she'd already used on herself a few times. I didn't push. People tell tow truck drivers weirdly personal stuff sometimes, but only when they feel like it. A few miles later she said, "I wasn't driving home from anything good. I kept my eyes on the road." I guessed that part. She let out a breath and turned toward me. "Was it that obvious?" "Kind of." She nodded once, like I'd confirmed something she already knew. "That's embarrassing. Being stranded in the rain is embarrassing. Having a bad night isn't." That got another quiet look from her. Longer this time. By the time we reached town, the roads were nearly empty. She directed me to a rental house on the edge of an older neighborhood. One of those places somebody had tried to make cheerful with fresh paint and cheap porch lights. I parked out front, told her the SUV would be at the garage first thing in the morning, and killed the engine. For a second, neither of us moved. She turned toward me, one hand still on the door handle. "Thanks for not making this worse. I don't think I did anything special. You showed up," she said. "Tonight that counts." Then she got out, ran through the rain to the porch and turned back before going in. Just one quick glance, but it held a little too long. Enough that I sat there another few seconds after the door shut behind her. Next morning I was at the garage by 7. Around 10, while I was under a pickup changing out a starter, My phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. This is Jenna. Please tell me my SUV is less dramatic in daylight. I wiped my hand and texted back. Still dramatic. Shop's looking at it now. Her reply came fast. I had a feeling. Also, thank you again for last night. I was not at my best. I looked at that longer than I needed to. Happens. I'll call when I know more. A minute later, another message came in. And if I need a ride later, do I call the garage like a normal person? Or do I admit I was hoping you'd answer? I stared at that text longer than I should have, then wrote back that if she needed a ride, I could help after lunch. That was how it started. Not with some big move. Just one ride that was easy to justify. Her SUV needed more than I'd hoped. Alternator was shot, battery was finished, and there was a belt issue that probably helped kill both. When I picked her up outside the rental that afternoon, the rain had backed off to a gray mist, and she was standing on the porch with a paper coffee cup and sunglasses on like she didn't want the day looking too closely at her. She got in, handed me the second coffee, and said, "This is not a bribe. It is strategic gratitude." I took it. That sounds more expensive. It probably is. She looked better than the first night, but only on the surface. She had jeans, a loose sweater, hair tied back messy, and no makeup that I could see. Still pretty. Actually worse that way for me. Easier to forget I was supposed to keep some distance. On the drive to the garage, she asked questions about the SUV like she wanted the full lesson, not just the bill. So I showed her. Walked her through the bad belt, the battery readings, the alternator issue. She stood close beside me near the lifted hood, arms folded, listening harder than most people ever do. "You always explain it this much?" she asked. "Only when someone keeps looking at me like I'm making it up." She smiled. "I'm from a family where every mechanic was assumed guilty until proven innocent. Good system. Keeps us sharp." But I spent longer than necessary talking her through it. I knew that while I was doing it. She knew too. I could tell by the way she leaned against the workbench after, coffee in both hands, like neither of us was in a hurry to end the conversation. That should have been enough. Ride repair talk done. Instead, she texted that evening to say thanks again, then asked if the price I quoted was still worth it for a vehicle that old. I answered. Then she asked what kind of used SUVs people usually bought around here if they didn't want a payment that ruined their life. I answered that too. The next morning she sent a picture of her kitchen light fixture with the message, "Is this normal or am I about to die in a rental house?" I told her I did roadside work and basic repairs, not miracles. She sent back, "So that's a yes on the light?" By the time her SUV was ready, I'd already gotten used to seeing her name on my phone. 2 nights later, she called around 7. Not texted. Called. "Hey," she said, and her voice came through lower than usual. "I know this is stupid, but the back door at this rental won't close all the way, and I've shoved it, kicked it, and insulted it personally. None of that helped." "You alone?" There was a small pause. "Yeah. I'm finishing up one call. I can swing by after." Another pause, softer this time. "Okay. Thanks." Her rental looked different at night. Warm light in the windows, rain ticking lightly off the gutters, the place somehow smaller than it had seemed the first time. She let me in wearing old gray shorts and an oversized t-shirt, barefoot, hair down and still damp like she'd showered not long before I got there. That hit me harder than it should have. "Don't judge the place," she said. "I'm doing a temporary life thing in here." I looked past her and saw takeout containers, half-open boxes, one lamp on in the living room, and a blanket thrown over the couch. "Looks lived in." That's generous. The back door had swollen from the weather and was catching bad at the frame. 10 minutes with a screwdriver, a little adjustment, and less force than she'd been using, and it shut clean. She stood nearby the whole time, watching with her arms folded. So I really did lose a fight with a door. Happens more than you'd think. To you. To people with worse tempers than mine. That got a real laugh out of her. First one yet. I should have left then, but she asked if I was hungry in that casual voice people use when they very much do not mean casually. She had Thai takeout, 2 cartons still warm, and nowhere for me to sit except a stool at the kitchen counter. So that's where I ended up while rain tapped the windows and the whole house smelled like noodles and lime and whatever she had on her skin that made it hard to think straight. She told me more that night than she had in the truck. Not all the details, but enough. The city relationship had been bad long before it ended. Not screaming bad every day. That might have been easier. It was the slow kind. The kind where you keep adjusting yourself to make things work until one day you realize you don't sound like yourself anymore. Ever lost your own voice trying to make a relationship work? How did you find it again? Comments below. She admitted she stayed too long. Admitted she kept calling it complicated when really it was just wrong and familiar. I told everyone I came back here to reset, she said, picking at the edge of the carton. That sounds healthier than saying I ran out of ways to pretend I was fine. I didn't say anything right away. She looked up at me then, probably checking if she'd said too much. You don't have to make it sound good for me, I said. That changed something in her face. Not dramatic. Just a drop in the shoulders, a little less effort. After that, the contact got easier and more dangerous. She'd ask if I was free for a ride into town while the weather was bad. I'd tell myself it was on my way. She'd text me a picture of some weird noise, stuck window, grocery aisle choice, and I'd answer like I belonged in the middle of her day. Once I helped carry 2 boxes from her hallway to the spare room, and she got embarrassed because they were still packed from the city. I haven't unpacked because that feels like admitting something, she said. Admitting what? She looked at the boxes, then at me. That I might actually be here. I didn't have a smart answer for that. I just set the box down and stood there too close to her in the narrow hallway while neither of us moved first. By the end of that week, I knew the sound of her knock at the shop door and the way she looked around before smiling, like she was still deciding whether she was allowed to. A few nights later the weather turned ugly again. Not just rain this time. Wind hard enough to shake signs loose, branches down in the side roads, power flickering all over town. I was finishing a battery call when Jenna texted. Power keeps cutting in and out. Then the back porch light popped and now half the kitchen is dead. Is this something I ignore or something I panic about? I called her instead of texting. You smell smoke? I asked. No. Anything hot near the breaker box? No. Just dark and annoying. I'll stop by. I told myself it was practical. She was alone, the weather was bad, and I'd already worked on enough little things around that place to know half of it had been fixed cheap. But by the time I pulled up, I already knew this wasn't just about a breaker. She opened the door before I knocked. Candle on the table behind her. House dim, hair loose, oversized sweatshirt falling off one shoulder. The power was out again by then, and the whole place felt smaller in the dark. You came fast, she said. I was nearby. That was true enough. The breaker had tripped. I reset it, checked the kitchen outlet that had sparked, unplugged a lamp she'd probably bought for $5 too cheap, and told her she'd live through the night. Devastating, she said. I was hoping for a more dramatic diagnosis. Sorry to disappoint you. Thunder rolled somewhere close, and right after that the lights died again. Not a flicker. Gone. She looked toward the kitchen, then back at me. Okay, that one was rude. I stayed longer than I needed to because the roads were getting worse and because leaving her there in a dark house felt wrong. We ended up in the kitchen with candles and cold takeout she reheated before the outage killed the microwave. Rain hit the windows in bursts, the wind pushed at the old frame of the house, and everything about it felt too close and too private for 2 people still pretending this was casual. She sat on the counter while I stood across from her eating noodles out of the carton. You always rescue people in storms? She asked. Only the ones with bad electrical judgment. That's nice. Makes me feel special. You weren't supposed to say that part out loud. She smiled, but it faded quick. She looked tired that night. Not sleepy. Worn down in a deeper way. My ex called earlier, she said. That was the first time she'd said it that directly. I kept my face neutral. Yeah. He does that thing where he sounds calm, so if I react at all I become the dramatic one. I set my food down. What did he want? She gave a humorless laugh. Depends which version you want. Officially, paperwork stuff. Storage unit stuff. Loose end stuff. In reality, she looked down into her lap. I think he wanted to know if I was still reachable. The wind hit the side of the house hard enough to make something outside bang once. Are you? I asked. She was quiet long enough that the answer already started forming before she said it. I don't want to be, she said. But some part of me still reacts like I owe him a response. That was honest, and I respected it. It also made my chest tighten in a way I didn't like. Later, when another breaker trip sent us both into the hallway at the same time, we ended up too close in the dark. She had a candle in one hand. I had my flashlight. She looked up at me like she was about to say something, then didn't. Her sweatshirt sleeve brushed my arm. I could smell rain on her hair. You should probably stop showing up every time I need something, she said softly. That what you want? She held my eyes. No, that's the problem. After that, there wasn't much room left between us. I kissed her first, mostly because if I waited another second, I was going to talk myself out of it. She kissed me back like she had been holding that exact moment in place for days. Slow at first, then not slow. The candle shook in her hand, and I took it from her before she dropped wax all over the floor. What happened after that didn't feel random. That was the thing. It felt like we had been building toward it through every ride, every kitchen conversation, every excuse to stay 10 minutes longer. By the time I ended up spending the night, it felt less like crossing a line and more like finally admitting where we'd already been heading. After that, our rhythm changed fast. She came by the garage for no reason except coffee and 5 minutes with me. I stayed later at her place without checking the time every 10 minutes. We got used to each other in little ways that made it feel more serious than either of us had said out loud. Her hand on my wrist while I was fixing something. Me knowing where she kept the extra towels. Her leaning into me when we stood at the sink. It got real in the quiet ways first. And that was exactly when I started seeing what hadn't actually ended. Ignored calls. Her expression changing when certain names came up. A folder on the counter one afternoon with legal papers half signed, half not. One night I asked when the storage unit was getting cleared out, and she went still before saying, soon. Soon turned out to mean she had a meeting set with him the next week and hadn't mentioned it. I found out because her phone lit up on the couch while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. The screen just flashed with his name and the message preview. I'll be there Tuesday. We need to finish this in person. When she came out, towel around her hair, I just looked at her and asked, Tuesday. She stopped cold. For a second, I saw the answer before she gave it. Not that she wanted him. Not that she was lying about everything. Just that she had still been living half inside that old life and half inside mine, hoping maybe she wouldn't have to choose the moment cleanly. It's about the paperwork and the unit, she said. I was going to tell you. When? She didn't answer fast enough. That did it. I nodded once, grabbed my jacket, and she followed me to the door. Wade, don't do this like I picked him. I'm not saying you did. Then what are you saying? I opened the door and the night air came in cold. I'm saying I can't be the place you hide while you figure out if your old life is really over. That landed hard. I could see it. I left anyway. Next few days I didn't ignore her, but I stopped making it easy. No extra stops. No drawn-out texts. No finding reasons to be near her. And for the first time since that night on the highway, she couldn't reach for me and feel me already there. The first 3 days after that felt longer than they should have. Not because she kept blowing up my phone. She didn't. That almost made it worse. I got one text the morning after. I understand why you pulled back. Then nothing. I worked, took calls, changed tires in cold mud, jumped dead batteries in grocery store lots, dragged one wrecked sedan out of a ditch east of town. Normal stuff. But every time my phone buzzed, some part of me checked before I could stop myself. Every time I passed her side of town, I noticed. By the 4th day, I knew she'd either gone to handle it or she hadn't. And the whole point was that I wasn't supposed to carry that part for her. Tuesday came and went. Then Wednesday. Thursday afternoon, I was in the bay finishing a brake line on an old pickup when I looked up and saw Jenna's SUV parked outside. For a second, I just stared at it. Then I saw she wasn't in it. Marty, who worked the front desk, leaned into the garage and said, You got someone asking for Wade. Look serious. That could have meant anything, so my chest tightened before I even wiped my hands. She was standing just inside the office when I came through. Jeans, dark jacket, hair pulled back. No panic in her face this time. No shaky voice. No excuse ready. She just looked tired in a cleaner way, like someone who'd finally stopped running in circles long enough to sit down. "Hey," she said. "Hey." I waited, but she didn't rush to fill the silence. That was new. "You got your SUV back," I said. "I did." Another small pause. "I handled it," she said. I knew what she meant, but I made her say it. "All of it." She nodded. "Paperwork's done. Storage units empty. Keys handed over. The last stupid shared account is closed." She let out a breath. "And I told him not to call me unless there's some actual legal disaster, and I don't expect one." I crossed my arms. "How'd it go?" "Bad at first." She gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "Then honest. Then bad again. Then finished." That sounded real enough to believe. She looked at me for a second, then added, "I almost came here right after. I didn't because I knew if I did, it would still feel like I needed you to get through it. And that wasn't fair." That hit me harder than anything else she could have said. "So what is this?" I asked. Her eyes stayed on mine. "This is me coming here after. When nothing's broken." The office suddenly felt too small for that conversation. So I jerked my head toward the side door, and we stepped outside. The weather had finally cleared. Not warm, but calm. Damp pavement, low clouds breaking apart, that clean smell after a stretch of bad rain. The garage lot was quiet except for distant traffic and the metal tick of an engine cooling nearby. She shoved her hands into her jacket pockets. "You were right." I didn't answer. "I was leaning on you before I'd actually finished leaving that life," she said. "Not because I wanted him back. I didn't. But because I was scared to stand there without something soft to fall into." She swallowed once. "And you were soft in the best way. Safe. Steady." I knew that. I think I knew it too fast. I looked down at the pavement, then back at her. "That's not exactly a compliment." "I know." She stepped a little closer. "This is the compliment part. I didn't come here because I need a ride, or a repair, or someone to calm me down. I came because once all that other noise was gone, you were still the person I wanted to see first." There it was. Plain. No cover on it. I studied her face, maybe looking for the old hesitation, the split attention, the feeling that part of her was still turned somewhere else. I didn't see it. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked like she was standing in one place completely. "You could have texted," I said. She gave me the smallest smile. "That felt too easy. Driving over here in person felt better?" "No," she said. "It felt worse," which is how I knew it was the right thing. That got a laugh out of me before I could stop it. She smiled at that, but her eyes had gone a little wet. "I'm not asking you to erase how messy this was," she said. "I know what it looked like. I know what I made you feel." She took one more step closer. "I just needed you to know that I'm here now because I choose you cleanly, not because I'm stranded, not because I'm scared to be alone tonight, not because I need help carrying something. Just you." I don't know if there was a perfect thing to say back. Probably not. I just reached for her. The second she moved into me, I knew the difference. That was the whole thing. The first night on the highway, she'd felt like someone trying to hold herself together long enough to get through the next hour. Every time after that, some part of her had still been braced for impact. But standing there outside the garage with the air finally clear and no emergency forcing her toward me, she felt steady, present. Like she wasn't landing. She was arriving. I put a hand at the back of her neck and kissed her slow. She exhaled against my mouth like she'd been holding that breath all week. When we pulled apart, she stayed close, forehead against mine. "So," she said quietly, "what happens if I don't have a car problem anymore?" I looked at her. "Then I guess you'll have to find a worse excuse to keep showing up." She smiled for real then, and this time there was nothing tired or careful in it. She had come to me once because her SUV died. This time she came with nothing broken at all. and that was how I knew it was real.